Hi, I'm Candace Marable from Santa Fe Community College, and I am Janet Curley's Operations Coordinator.
Thank you. Abby.
Hi, I'm Abby. I'm with the Auberly Employment Institute in McKeesport, Pennsylvania, just outside of Pittsburgh.
David.
Yes, I'm David Cantu with the City of San Elizario, and I'm also part of the Rio Grande Council of Governments here in West Texas. And I'm happy to be here to learn as much as I can.
Okay. Diana Napier.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Diana Napier with the Workplace. We're here in Bridgeport, Connecticut.
Okay. Jake.
Hi, Mike. Jake Markowski. I work with Abby at the Auberly Employment Institute in Pittsburgh, PA, Region 3.
Okay. Nora.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nora Sherman. I'm with the City College of New York, Charles Rangel Infrastructure Workforce Initiative.
Okay. Lena Gutierrez.
Hi, everyone. I work with Nora here at City College for the Charles B. Rangel Infrastructure Workforce Initiative.
Okay. Jason Marangel.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually not related to the good Congressman Rangel, but I do work for his initiative here with Milena and Nora. Thank you.
Great. Great. Mac, how are you?
Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, Mac Elabed, Southwest Economic Solutions here in Detroit, and we have a current EPA grant here.
Great. Candace. Candace Maribel.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
There you are.
I already introduced myself.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's me. Okay.
It's all right.
Fred, and Fred's going to be our special guest in 2 weeks. Fred Lucero, he's from Richmond, not Richmond, Virginia, Richmond, California. And he has the distinction of being one of our oldest grantees. They started in 1998 and then had a pause, and they've been re-upped 9 times. So, Fred, do you want to introduce yourself?
Fred Lucero, City of Richmond, Richmond Build, and Richmond Youth Build. So I manage 2 programs.
Great. Lois. Oops, you could turn your sound on. The little button there.
Okay, can you hear me now?
There we go.
Okay, Los Ellis here, Canton, Ohio. Been on a couple of weeks, and hopefully I can get some of you good folks to help me get started and do well.
Okay, good, good. We're going to be talking about that for the next several PLCs. B. Michael. Mr. Michael. Oops. Okay, you just muted yourself. We'll come back to you. Ms. Shannon.
Hi, I'm Nancy Shannon. I'm a new Brownfield project officer for job training in EPA Region 3.
Oh, welcome. We always like to have regional people sit in. How about Laura White?
She can only listen today, Mike.
Okay, well, that's fine. Good morning and welcome to the PLC. Jessica Guzman.
Hi, I'm Jessica from Pastor Corporation, Puerto Rico.
Okay. And Ed Kelly.
Good morning, Ed Kelly with Nine Communities Coalition in Pahrump, Nevada. We're just a little rural town about 65 miles outside of Las Vegas.
Fantastic. Sir Lavari. W. Lavari. If I pronounce that right. Lavari.
Sorry, my full name's not on there. I'm the job training coordinator in Region 1. Excuse my pink background. I'm actually visiting Ohio. I saw those other Ohio people on here. I work in New England for the Region 1. I believe I saw Diana on here, and today I think
Yes.
Bruce Mendelson is speaking.
Yes. Well, I don't know if Bruce will be here. Hopefully
Or-
Jeff will be here.
Somebody
I'm
from
not-
Mass Hire, I believe, but yes. So it's
Okay.
nice to see some Region 1 representation as well.
Great. How about, did Ed Kelly?
Yep, I introduced already.
Okay, I'm sorry. And Rachel? Welcome, Rachel.
Hello.
How are you today? How are things?
The weather is supposedly getting bad, but I'm working from home with the kids today.
She has got a tough brownfield job. You're rural. You're working with challenged populations, and we're here to help you get through this.
Yes, we're excited too. We had our first flyer put into the tribal newspaper today, and we've got a bunch of hits today of interest.
Fantastic.
So we're excited.
Fantastic. We'll be showing what Bruce has done in Mass Hire. He's put together some recruitment posters for both for students and for employers, and we'll have those in the notes. We have a lot of new people, so if you got a notice, you probably have our email address. You could drop me your contact information if you want to get on the PLC list, msenu@gmail.com. And we're part of HMTRI. We've been working with this program since its inception. And our job basically is to put people together, get ideas, exchange ideas, and try to see what works, what doesn't work, things that successful grantees have done that has worked for them. Like Fred and his program has been hit home run time after time. And he can teach us some interesting ideas. Some we've already implemented and some we've probably not thought about. And so we're kind of putting the party together and try to get people together and see what comes out of that. Did I miss anyone? Would anyone like to introduce themselves that I missed? I hit a couple of people twice. Okay. Well, we usually start out with news from Washington and things that have to do with job training. I'll turn it over to Steve, and he can go through some of the meetings that are upcoming and go from there. Steve.
Okay, Mike, thank you. Again, good to see everyone. The first thing I want to talk about is the in-person 2023 HMTRI All Grantee Meeting, which will be in Alexandria, Virginia, May 24th and 25th. And the travel dates would be the day before and the day after, 23rd and 26th. So that week, that conference is going to happen. In fact, we just got a signed contract with the host hotel, which will be the Alexandria Old Town Hilton. So, but it just happened. So we're going to be getting information out to you very soon about the logistics, phone number to call in for registration. Also, we'll be sending you out a registration for the conference so we can make sure we know who's coming and all of that. So the logistics to all of that will be coming probably within a week or so, very soon. But please put those dates on your calendar if you haven't already. And again, it'll be at the Hilton Old Town Alexandria downtown. Okay, so the other piece of information I wanted to give you, or a couple things. One is the Brownfields 2023 call for ideas is open, and you may have seen that email if you subscribe to any of the National Brownfields listservs. The call for ideas will close on Monday, the 6th, so it's just going to be open for a few more days. And basically, they're looking for dynamic ideas for sessions that will explore the latest and greatest tools, methods, trends, and case studies in brownfields redevelopment, revitalization. They're looking to have at this conference, which will be in Detroit, August 8th through 11th. They're going to have over 100 panels. They're going to have roundtables, topic talks, training workshops, and much more. And this year they will feature 7 new tracks to explore the evolving brownfields landscape with topics like housing, equity, minimizing displacement, environmental justice, and public participation and assessment and cleanup approaches. So there's going to be a lot of stuff happening at the Brownfield Conference in Detroit, August 8th through 11th, 2023. And Mac, since you're in Detroit, we plan on seeing you there. So look forward to seeing you and Karen and anyone else from your organization. Also wanted to, this is another FYI, an organization that that we work closely with is called PEAT, which is the Partnership for Environmental Technology Education. Some of you know them. They have a 2-week Train the Trainer every year. They hold it at Scott Community College in Bettendorf, Iowa, which is along the banks of the Mississippi. This year, it's going to be from May 8th through the 19th. And the executive director of National PEAT, his name is Kirk Laughlin, and he always lets us know when they have anything going on like this, because he's always wanting to reach out to brownfield communities. And we've had a number of our grantees that have actually gone through this Train the Trainer before. They have a grant from the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences. And through that grant, they've established this organization called the Community College Consortium for Health and Safety Training. And that's the organization that puts this training on. This time over the 10 days, folks will go through the 40-hour waste site worker, the 24-hour industrial emergency response, DOT hazmat awareness, confined space, non-entry rescue, hazard awareness and communication, and also disaster site worker awareness. So all of these courses will be offered. Students will go through them. This is primarily for trainers, not really administrators. You will be getting, suited up and going through all these exercises. It's a fantastic program. The trainers are exceptional. And because this is offered through NIHS, they've got a scholarship that basically 20 scholarships this year covering travel, tuition, lodging, per diem, pretty much everything. They basically pay your way. The course is free, and then you walk away with a ton of materials and a great network of trainers to call on if you ever need to reach out. The application is now available, and it will close on February 28th, and it will be in the notes, but I will also put it in the chat box here when I get done in case you're interested. If you want further information, you can reach out to them or contact Mike, Nolan, or I, because we're familiar with this organization and might be able to help answer some questions. A couple other things. There's a couple other RFPs that are still out. One is the FY 2023 Technical Assistance to Brownfields, basically TAB grants. This grant has a goal of guiding communities through brownfields assessment, cleanup, and revitalization processes, and helping them understand the complex brownfields related, subjects. The solicitation is anticipated to be $5 million over a 5-year period for each of EPA's 10 regions. In addition, there's a $3 million grant will be awarded for a nationwide technical assistance component. So that's one grant. There's another one called, it's the FY 2023 Brownfields Training, Research, and Technical Assistance grants. And in this one, 5 entirely new nationwide brownfields technical assistance cooperative agreements, which will focus on 5 different areas of technical assistance and research will be awarded. And the award amounts will range between $500,000 to $1 million over a 4 or 5-year period. Again, on both of these, the application deadline is February 14th. So that's coming pretty quickly. Then the last thing I wanted to go through, there's a few questions that came in. First one was, I was not able to open the link to the PowerPoint presentation that Land Force gave at the last PLC. Do you have another link? And indeed we do. I'll even pop that in the chat box here later once I get off. But it will also be in the notes. So there's another way to access that that presentation, which was excellent. Another question is, we are currently doing training under the EPA Brownfield Job Training Grant. Some of those we have contracted out the training. Others we use in-house experts to do the training. Are there guidelines about what must be included, documented, credentials of instructors, or other information we need to follow to present a certificate at the end of the training? That's kind of a long question, and a lot of it really, it's highly dependent on local, state, federal, and association credential requirements. We're going to explain a lot more in detail in the notes, so just kind of keep that in mind. There's a lot of moving parts to that particular question. Another one is, I just heard we got the FY23 Brownfields Job Training Grant. Do you know the start and end dates for the grants that were just announced? And basically all selected organizations will receive official notice and a grant package shortly if they haven't already. In some cases, there may be an official announcement and or a photo op with public officials. That just really is dependent on your situation. Make sure the individual submitting the grant is aware principal contacts have been known to change jobs once the application's submitted, and sometimes the person will change jobs. Make sure that contact information is up to date. And then lastly, the last question, kind of related, do you know the start and end dates for the grant? I've received notification from EPA, but nothing official with dates. There's a number of different dates to keep in mind. There's the date of the announcement, the final date of award, following the approval of work plans, budget, grants administration review. It's also authorization to spend funds before September 31st, 2023. Then also there's a project period, which is 3 years for the FY21 and 22 grants and 5 years for the FY23 grants. And then there's a budget period, so which is usually concurrent to the project period. But we would suggest contacting the regional coordinator if you need to spend funds before final authorization to spend funds is given. For example, to attend the all grantee meeting on May 24th and 5th, EPA can grant permission to spend funds up to 90 days before the final authorization to spend funds is authorized. So just a heads up on that. You might want to talk to your EPA coordinator if you're in that situation. Then lastly, we will have in the notes kind of a timeline for the projected FY24 cycle based on the FY23 cycle. That will also be in the notes, assuming there's another grant cycle. With that, Mike, did you want to add anything?
Well,
Bruce?
I would. We've got Steve commented on some really major issues, and we'll be discussing some of these in separate PLCs. Things like finding qualified certified instructors. What is a certified instructor? What is a certified curriculum? What courses have to be certified? What courses don't? So that is in itself a PLC that we'll look at later when we talk about curriculum development. Also, in terms of these timelines, we'll be talking about that in detail. So with that, I don't know if someone from Mass Hire here. Jeff was going to try to make it, but Bruce is the person, and actually Bruce was our presenter just a couple of PLCs ago. They have a great program in Massachusetts, and they have an upcoming roundtable on March 1st. And I'll put them in the notes. They will be in the notes announcing it. And I'm also going to put in one of their recruitment posters. They did it exactly right. Mass Hire's got a fantastic program. They do it right. They're in U2 of their grant. They've developed posters for potential recruits, posters for potential employers, and posters about the program in general. And it's a great for supporters. They're very concise, and I'll put them in the notes so you can get an idea of what they do. This particular roundtable on March 1st is going to talk about environmental job training in Massachusetts area. And we'll have information on going to that roundtable or just seeing what they're doing and how they're organizing it. As I said, I'm sure Bruce will be on future PLCs and he might be able to talk about it at our next one. I think he's really excited about the program and continues to do an excellent job. I would like to thank him for sending this in. If any of you have things you would like us to announce, of course, we have PLCs every 2 weeks. If you've got an event coming up or something like you would like to put in the notes, send it to us and we'll make sure that we put it in there as a matter of interest that what PLCs are doing in their particular community. We'd like to spend a little time, now that the grants have been announced, we've got 3 conditions. We've got, hooray, those who got the 5-year grant, congratulations. 29 people have a 5-year, $500,000 grant to work on. When they were asking for ideas, we had 2 mantras, more money and more time. We got the more time, we didn't get the more money per year, but we'll be working on that. And it does give an opportunity for people to hire full-time for a longer period of time. And that also is going to be interesting to see. EPA has not announced yet what's going to happen in FY24. We anticipated, we put a timeline in on what they've done in FY23. EPA tends to be very similar in terms of the RFA every year. They tweak it a little bit, but basically it's the same. And the timelines are relatively the same. This year they came out of the box fairly early. We thought they would announce the 29 FY23 grantees sometime in the first quarter. They did it the first week of the first quarter. So we got a head start. And that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing because it does take time to get through the grants office. There are things I'm going to be talking about in a little while that are coming down the stream. Almost like a python swallowing a piglet. There is a huge amount of money. This comes from the Biden initiative, primarily from the infrastructure bill. Lots of money coming to environmental justice, EJ program. And they are the mints that we've talked about it in prior PLCs, where we've talked about the different programs. Steve alluded to 2 of the programs that are being funded under this. You might be familiar with the TAB programs. We are the technical assistance provider for workforce development in terms of training jobs, getting jobs, placing people in environmental jobs. The TAB program, which is technical assistance to brownfields, covers primarily the boots on the ground. How do you get an assessment grant? They do in the technical end what we do in the jobs end. How do you determine what parcels of property you should be assessing? What's the revolving fund program about? How do you access revolving loan funds? The TAB program started out with about 5 technical assistance providers. We are the only one for job training. We're the kind of the stepson of the whole program. We get less than a tenth of the, about a tenth of the, maybe less than a tenth of the number of grantees. The actual cleanup, revolving loan funds and assessment is a much bigger program than ours. And they originally had 5 technical assistance providers. That would be our counterparts. And they would help communities with their grants, which are a little different than ours. You may have been contacted, some of you, and some of you may be working in the same office as the Brownfields TAB program, but they work closely with us, or they should be, because their communities are our communities. In fact, we'll be talking about that when it's time to look at community assessment, labor market assessments. They are cleaning up, assessing communities that are just like ours as candidates for cleanup. Now that's different. There's TAB and there's us. Some people call us a TAB program for job training. But there's a whole nother area that is, and we've talked about and put in the notes, all of the meetings, the EJ meetings, and you may want to go to some of those. These are held once a month, and it talks about what they're doing over in the other shop. This shop was really not funded until this year, and all of a sudden they've got tons of money. They're setting up their own technical assistance providers for environmental justice. And these will be in every region. There'll be millions of dollars spent for technical assistance in the environmental justice area, not so much in brownfields cleanup and not so much in workforce development, but in environmental justice. And right now they're in the process of setting up this infrastructure in the federal government. They're trying to hire people, they're trying to give out grants. And what's going to happen is it's going to work down into the state level where there will be billions of dollars actually that has to be spent by 2026. It has to be out the door. And these will be environmental justice grants, EJ grants. And this will be things that are done in the community and projects having to do with environmental justice. We're talking about it might be lead pipe programs. It will be very interesting to see how that interfaces with the technical assistance to brownfields programs. There'll be a lot on climate change, resilience that they'll be talking about, identifying areas that, in fact, they're developing models as we speak to identify areas that qualify for environmental justice funds. So that's all coming down the stream, and we'll be talking about it as it comes. It's probably important for us to know where we're at in relationship to all these funds. And I'll talk about it a little later, because some of you may be able to apply for these funds when the money starts. There will be lots of money, and when it starts coming down the stream, while it's not an environmental worker program, I think it's important that you realize there may be a lot of funds out there in environmental justice. And a lot of you are working in the whole area of environmental justice and resilience and social equity, in addition to environmental job training. So we're going to keep you informed on those programs as they come along. Well, let's shift over to, you got your grant, 29 of you. And what do I do now? And you get, hopefully, the first thing you're going to do is get your grant package. And have you, Abby, do you know if you've gotten your grant package yet from the regional? Oh, that's great. They're on.
Yeah. And I submitted it all already. So.
Wow, fantastic. Okay, so that's the first line of getting the program. And you basically signed off that you're accepting the grant. That's number one. And that's an important concept, because now your organization is close. You and Jake and you all work closely together. You get in a bigger organization and you have changed your personnel. They may get the grant package, you don't. And sometimes there have been changes in personnel, and that gets lost in the confusion. So those of you who got the grant, you should have gotten your grant package, and your regional coordinator is fantastic. So I'm not surprised that you got that already, and you're working on it. So the next step for you all now is to work with the grants office. Is that correct? You're going to be working now, negotiating your work plan, and you're going to be looking over your budget, verifying it, getting everything ready. What's nice, and you've done exactly the right thing, get that grant packages back as fast as possible. because you usually often will get bogged down when you get to the grants office because they're really backlogged. And this is really the time, if you need to tweak your grant, to probably do it in terms of whether it's budget, whether it's work plan, whether it's scheduling. And it's a good time now that you've got your grant package and that's in place and you've signed off on it. It's probably a good time to get your team together, find out who's going to do what, who promised you what, what's their schedule going to be, and sit down and say, okay, here we go. It's a done deal. As far as we're concerned, we've got to cross the I's and dot the T, cross the T's, dot the I's, work with the grants office. But this is what we're expecting for you to do for us. And this is when we need the help. And this is what we're going to be doing. And if we have to staff up, we'll staff up. But this is all the preliminary things that need to be done. You probably need to get your advisory board together and tell them you've got the grant, and perhaps hold your first meeting to introduce your plans. That would come after you've met with some of your key partners. Once you know what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, you can sit down with your advisory board and get their input and what they say, and they may have new ideas on people that you may want to bring in into the program. Hopefully, and you've already got great relationships with regional coordinators. We've got 4 new grantees who have to develop those relationships with their coordinators, and that's important. They're the people you call and work with, or their assistants, and get that line of communications going. And they kind of look at you as their stepchildren to help. They're very proud of you, and usually always watch out for your best interests. And if something comes down the pike that can be of assistance, then they'll pass it on. Now, hopefully you'll get authorization to spend funds soon. Now you've been a grantee for quite a while. When do you all usually get your authorization to spend funds? It's about 90 days, 2
Yep.
to 3 months.
Yeah, we're shooting for April 1st.
That's good. It takes a while, and here it is, January, and 2 months to get through the grants process. Many people aren't as efficient as you are, and they take a little longer. And we've had some that actually, the nice thing is that EPA has backed this up to start early. We've had some that they're still trying to get through the grants office on September 31st. The money has to be out the door by this fiscal year, which is September 31st, the end of the fiscal. So by starting early, you've got plenty of time to negotiate, to finalize your work plan, and to get going. Now, some of you who do wait may find out that we've got a May 24th all grantee meeting, and you may want to spend funds to go to that meeting. Now, HMTRI and EPA will cover the lodging and most of the cost of the meeting. You do have to pay transportation to get there and incidentals. And to have that covered under the grant, you'll want to contact your regional coordinator and say you can get up to 90 days advance if for some reason you have not set up your accounting yet, and Auberly has already done that, so they've got an advantage. But if it comes out that you're not settled till August, you can get a request with some paperwork to charge it off on a grant up to 90 days before the actual authorization to spend funds. So all of that is pretty much common sense, getting your team together. And then, of course, number one, recruiting. And we're going to be talking about partnerships and recruiting in upcoming PLCs. And we'll go through the 8 critical issues, starting with partnerships and awareness of your program, and flowing through recruitment and labor market assessment and into retention and curriculum and placement. So any questions on those who have gotten their grants already? We're we're going to talk, if not, we're going to talk about those who may not have gotten a grant, and there are some, and some who this may be their first try. There are actually two groups in this. There's those who were just not funded. This is their first chance at it. They just weren't funded. And then there are some grantees that they're on their third year and their grants are getting ready to expire. And we're going to talk a little bit about that and a little bit about resiliency and how to extend your strategies. For those of you who didn't get a grant, the first thing I want to say, and we'll put in the notes, is it's no reflection on your program. These are objective grants. They don't get to come out and visit you. They have to set up EPA. If they have 70 applications or so, they've got to see how did people respond to the evaluation criteria. And unfortunately, good grant writers tend to get grants. They're very good at what they do. They're very concise. They use a lot of numbers, and we'll be talking about that in future PLCs. But for those of you who didn't get a grant, the first thing you have to do is contact that regional coordinator and get a debriefing. Please, everyone who did not get a grant, get a debriefing, and they will tell you what they saw in your grant. Set up a time to converse with them. They'll talk about where you lost points on the evaluation criteria, what you could do to strengthen your program, how, and they will say the same thing I'm saying. Many of our programs, the first time they apply, they just don't get it. They don't get the grant because this is a tough grant to get. And once you've got it, we've got 4 new grantees, but it's a difficult haul because they have not set up their advisory committees. They're not, they don't have their partnerships truly evolved. They have not evolved. The recruitment has been, they really haven't gone too far in terms of recruitment. So in terms of responding to the evaluation ranking criteria, it's very difficult for them. So there is a bias. Their EPA wants to give new grantees an opportunity to participate in the program. As Jeff Barnett used to say, or the regional coordinators, they did not, originally they did not want people to reapply. They did want, say, people going to the trough. Well, that's not the way the program has developed. It's actually, our best programs are getting better every time and they recompete against each other. And so your programs have to get better. Don't ever resubmit the same program. And we'll be talking about that as we get closer, but the whole idea is don't give up, because if you did not get a grant, whether it's your first try or second or third try, we just have to go back to those ranking criteria and rethink your partnerships, expand them, and we'll be talking about that. Rethink your labor market assessment, your curriculum, and stay engaged in all of the HMTRI and not only HMTRI, but all of the programs that have to do with job training to stay in the loop. There are some programs that they've done their 3 years, and we've had programs that have left BJT, Brownfield Job Training, and they've come back. And in fact, we had one this year, Tacoma, left for several years and they came back. And Northwest was another one. They leave the program and then they come back. Sometimes it's a matter of writing a grant and you're competing against some really good grant writers, and you may have been in a hurry. You can't write this grant in a month. It's really takes a period of time to start putting the pieces together and develop the partnership. So maybe you were writing a different grant. Your 3 years is up and now you've got to find, do I shut the program down? What do I do? And I have always encouraged people, try to keep the program going. Do something to keep your program going. Now, as I had mentioned earlier, there's going to be a lot of environmental justice money coming down the pike. This happened with St. Nick's, where they ran out of time. would not get re-upped, but they were able to get additional funds. Those funds might come from Department of Labor. They might come from the state. There might be a transition type of grant. So start looking for other grants that are very similar to job training to keep your team together, keep your advisory committee together. You basically don't want to have to start from scratch again. If you've been away too long, you're almost starting over. Try to keep your partnerships up. Look for these local funders. Sometimes you're able to reduce your offerings. Some of the programs have actually kept their programs going and reduce their offerings and perhaps do refreshers for money, contract refresher training for people who have gotten their HAZWOPER and need to do a refresher. Actually, even for good programs that are well funded, they might offer a refresher on a contractual basis where people could come back a year later or annually and get their refresher done. They're already employed at the business and they want to get the refresher, and they're willing, or their boss is willing to pay for that training. You can migrate into contract training where you use your team that you've developed under this program and start doing training for business and industry. In other words, migrate out of, right now, for the time being, migrating out of the funded Brownfield job training program and shift over to providing contract training for businesses. And whether it's a steel company, might be a scrapyard, it might be people in the community, it might be a hospital that needs nurses training and they need HAZWOPER training or biomed. You may have to change your curriculum a little bit. And it's kind of sacrilege for me to talking about something other than EPA funding brownfield job training. But what we want you to do is keep your expertise and your program intact. So say, okay, get your team together and say, okay, we didn't get one this year. We'll reapply for 24. But in the meantime, what can we do with our team? We've got our instructor base. We've got our curriculum together. We've got an advisory board already in place. Let's see what we can do in terms of contract training. Another thing you might want to do is merge. Think about merging with whether it's a community college, a social service organization, a bigger organization than you've got right now. In other words, you may be in a position where you're just too small and you need to stick your program in with another one and become a division of that. And of course, as we know from our guests who speak, many of our grantees are part of a much bigger organization, and the Brownfield job training is just a portion of a much bigger program. And this is a way of keeping the good work that you've done in the past, or even if you've never applied, going and get into the program. And of course, it goes without saying, as we always talk about, expanding your partnerships. One thing we like to say in this program, and you all know, is once you're in the program and you're an alumni, you're always in the program. You're certainly welcome to come to all of our events, our all grantee meeting, the good time, the PLCs, stay on our PLC list, and stay with us and try to continue with that. So those are kind of the three situations we found ourselves in. Those who are very happy and looking forward, those who are disappointed they didn't get the grant, and those who are really disappointed or are going to go in and get it in the next round. And as I said, there's lots of money coming down the stream, so we're all kind of looking forward to what's up next. I'm going to turn it over to Nolan, but anyone have any questions on what their situation might be moving forward from here? We hope you'll all attend the events and try to put together as you go a program, a training program, keeping that community. You would be amazed at how many grantees are able to get other funds, local funds, whether it's business and industry, might be a local labor contract, it might be a pilot project that the state wants to do. You'd be quite amazing. And actually, this program is often dwarfed by these ancillary programs that come along. And we spent a lot of our time saying, stick with us, even though you may have started with us, but then you got really big and you don't need us anymore. And we've had programs in New York that we started receiving federal funds, and they said, well, you know, they started receiving state funds. They were actually written into the state budget for their program. They demonstrated an awesome program, and New Jersey Youth Corps just went off on their own. And Jobs for Youth was another one in Boston that they went in a different direction, but they got started in this program and then went into a different direction. So you can bring up questions anytime, but I would like to turn it over to Nolan, who is going to talk about a really important issue that confronts almost all of our job training programs. Nolan, do you want to?
Hi, thank you. And again, good morning, good afternoon. Appreciate you letting me speak to you. Before I get started, I want to give you just a little background. My second, third, fourth career, whatever it was, for the past 25 years has been as a contractor to the Department of Energy. I'm not retired. But in 2009, I became manager and chief administrator for on-site occupational medical operations and services. And among the myriad duties of that, I was responsible for policy and implementation of medical laboratory services, which included drug and alcohol testing. So this was new hire, random, for cause, incident, accident, special programs. And this was for a 5,000 person contractor and federal workforce at the Department of Energy Defense Nuclear Facility at Savannah River. So in that industry, obviously we're a little probably more conservative than most in terms of our posture. But I wanted to catch up to a scan we did in October when we had our refresher workshop. And in that, we wanted to do a scan of drug and substance use testing by the BJT programs. And so we had 2 informal poll questions concerning drug substance use. And we asked the participants at the recent workshop. And they were high level scan just to determine pretty much how grant recipients handle drug substance use testing in their programs. So the first question was about our BJT program requires drug substance abuse testing. And we asked you to check all that apply. And we had about 30 individuals respond to the question. First slide, please. So anyway, the breakout was about 40% of the respondents had testing prior to participation. Almost the same number didn't offer it or require it. About a third, it varied by employer, about a quarter during the program, and there were no programs that required it as a completion requirement. And so the next question we asked was, what's the consequence of an unsatisfactory drug or substance abuse test result in your BJT program? Next slide. So about 40%, again, didn't offer it, so there was none. About 37%, it resulted in termination. About a third had some version of counseling. About 23%, or just under a quarter, had temporary suspension, and about 3% had probation. So next slide, please. So without reading too much into the responses, we can come to some general conclusions from this limited poll. So about half the grantees require drug testing as a prerequisite into their training programs. About a third indicated that drug testing is managed by employers. Less than a quarter of the poll participants performed drug tests during the training cohort, and less than a quarter of the poll participants would terminate a participant if they failed a drug test. So, take that for what it will. We were just looking at what's going on in the programs, but I want to take a step back and look at this issue from a different perspective. Next slide, please. So essentially, from the outset through completion of your program, it's imperative that you advocate and assess the applicant and participants' fitness for duty. And this is basically their ability to perform work safely. So perhaps in the future, we'll have, some sessions on safety and integrated safety management and all of those things. But the fitness for duty is essential to ensure the health and safety of the worker, their coworkers, the public, and the environment. And additionally, this is going to underpin the credibility or lack of credibility of your program. And so what this gets to from my past life is this idea of impairment. There's lots of reasons why things happen or don't go well, all kinds of distraction and human error and those things. But impairment is one of those things that really coincides with drug and substance use testing. And so, of ongoing concern is the myriad of legislation governing the legality of medicinal and recreational use of marijuana and opioid-based medications. And so you need to be keenly aware of the various laws and regulations governing substance use and abuse in your state, as well as occupational and employer-based expectations. Specifically, some laws and policies are based on the presence of a controlled substance, which is different from impairment. So, for example, if you look at the presence of THC, the active ingredient in marijuana, it may be legal in a state that allows medicinal or recreational use. However, cannabis is listed as a Schedule I drug under federal guidelines. And so there are presumptive tests for the presence of THC in blood or urine, but there's no agreed upon threshold limit indicating impairment. Consequently, an employer may judge a positive THC test result as an indicator of lack of fitness for duty. And you can compare that to, say, an alcohol standard where somebody blows into a breathalyzer and it's above 0.08, and that indicates impairment. And so, this becomes difficult because every state is different. Sometimes jurisdictions are different. Where your employees are. So somebody works hard, straight lace, they get off work, it's legal. They do a couple of hits on a Friday, show up for work Monday, for some reason they get tested and something might be present in their bloodstream or a urine test, and that can be a knockout. Likewise, they may have perfectly good medical reasons, but again, there's a issue around new hires, and that is, you've been with a company for years, they probably have some kind of diversion or intervention program. But as a new hire, companies often don't want to take the risk. And so it's easier for them to just say, no, this isn't going to work. And if some of your population is coming out of criminal justice or drug rehab, this can be a real big flag. So here's a 5-point template that you may want to use when determining your program's approach to assessing participants' drug or substance use. Next slide. Next slide. So first, what are the legal implications? What are the applicable federal and state legal standards? So again, if somebody has a driver's license, CDL, they might be under a different standard, depending on what kind of work they do. And so again, you need to know what is that standing in your state and how does that compare with federal standards. Next, what's the policy? What are the policies of our employers and partnering agencies? So, again, it's important to understand where they are in terms of how they view employees and, what happens when an employee tests positive. Safety. There's a question, can a worker who is impaired or under the influence perform work safely? So again, if you wouldn't want a person impaired or under the influence to watch your child or drive you on the freeway, they're working with equipment, they're working around others. And so, this is one of those things that can lead to incident or accident. What are the effective attitudes and behaviors? And so how will substance use affect worker behavior? their attitude, their comportment, their judgment, their reliability. So, getting to work on time or being able to deal with a supervisor who might be a little bit in their face. These are all things that are influenced by substance use. And this doesn't mean abuse, it's just substance use. And then 5, the reputation. How will a for-cause termination impact your program's reputation and future graduate placement? So regardless of the decision you make concerning your program's direct, indirect, or hands-off management of participant drug or substance use, it's important that your participants understand the potential impact or consequence of their behaviors. Again, we're teaching them how to manage their own behaviors, and they need to understand what the consequences are of these decisions they make. And again, that may be outside of legality, but it may be an issue in terms of how it appears or how it will affect them and your program. And so in assessing drug and substance use, many employers use a 5-panel drug screen, and it's standard for federal government mandatory guidelines for workplace drug testing. And in the notes, there's a link to that website. And the Department of Transportation, DOT, also uses a 5-panel urine drug test. And DOT truck drivers are required to undergo a drug test prior to employment at least once randomly per year after most accidents, and if reasonable suspicion exists that a driver under the influence for abusing drugs. And some federal and state programs rely on a determination by an occupational medical director to determine the consequence of the test results. And that means there might be mitigating factors. So in some circumstances, it's not the test itself, it's how that's interpreted by a medical officer after they've been reviewing and interviewing the person being tested. However, many employers rely on the test results alone as a determinant. And so as of this writing, I'm not aware of any employers that have diversion programs for applicants or new hires. So again, you're dealing with a population that are new hires, and so they're not going to catch a lot of breaks, probably from an employer. So they need to understand that. You need to understand that. And so whether you're doing the drug testing directly, whether some other part of your team does the drug testing, even if the employers do it, those people you're training need to understand what the implications are. And in fact, some BJT programs have moved to a more rigorous testing guideline, including a 10-panel drug test. So we live in a social world, and there's lots of issues and temptations out there, whether it's drugs, legal or not, alcohol, a number of things that can impair someone's judgment and therefore put them and your program at risk. So last slide, please. So there are some best practices for the student screening and assessment. And remember, and probably most critically, the quality and reputation of your program is going to be determined by the quality of your graduates. And so there's just no way around this. The successful programs don't rush to finalize applicant selection. You've heard from your peers that many of them do interview processes and multi-meeting processes to really have a chance to look over those applicants. And they invest the time up front to determine the applicant's fit, their motivation, their willingness to stay with the program before that formal program acceptance and enrollment. And then remember that every post-selection dropout is a lost opportunity for a different qualified student that could have benefited from your program. So again, it's not a judgment on someone's morality. It's just knowledge of what their habits or what their actions, what impacts those can have in terms of their employment and in terms of the reputation of your employers, the reputation of your program with your employers. So, if you send somebody and they're let go for cause, it's going to be difficult for that employer to say, oh, send me some more. And so it's really something I think you need to be careful with. I'm not the person to say judgment wise, the drug testing must be done. But I think you need to make your trainees aware of what the consequences are of drug use. And I think you really need to get with your employers and find out what their attitudes and opinions are about it. So that's it. So are there any questions?
Nolan, I have a question. Clearly, the idea of no graduate will leave here who's on drugs, whatever that you define drugs as being, but many of our programs will accept people who are on drugs, but part of their mission is help them rehabilitate before they get to the courses that may put other people at risk. So how do we address that? For example, they may accept someone who doesn't pass, they don't pass a marijuana test, but they feel they could work with them in the program to help them drop the habit. And
well, again, I
through,
think it's, I'm sorry, go ahead.
As they get through the program, they basically clean up.
Okay, and that is great. And some programs have the, I'd say, space and flexibility to do that. Some don't. In some places, especially if you're in a jurisdiction where cannabis use is legal for either medicinal or recreational purposes, that might be a really difficult climb. We know we've had it in federal sites where people say, well, it's legal for me. I'm in Colorado. I'm at a federal site in Colorado. It's legal for me to get high on the weekend. And we say, yeah, it is. But if it shows up in your bloodstream or urine on a Monday or Tuesday, you're still done, and so it's really dependent on what is the posture and attitude of those employers. And it's not just about legal compliance. I mean, it's legal to have a beer with lunch if you're not blowing a .08, but you come back to work with alcohol on your breath and somebody might make a judgment about that. And so I think it's really about helping people understand the circumstance that they're in, let alone the idea that there is a consequence, sometimes fair or unfair, but other times when we look at accident investigations, or what are some of the contributing causes to somebody's slower reflex or not noticing or inattentiveness, sometimes it does come down to that. And the same thing can happen with just lack of sleep or medication or, being too caught up in some emotional distress argument in your life. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons why accidents and incidents occur. This looks at one very specific area, which has to do with substance use and how that impacts the workplace. And so the key is really understanding your employers and finding out what is their posture towards substance use. And that may or may not comport to regulation, but that's going to be their attitude about substance use. And so if you're trying to send them qualified, certified candidates, that's part of that deal.
So if I'm applying for your program and I say, well, I smoke, but I really would like to become a certified hazmat truck driver. If you let me in the program, I'll stop. So how do you handle that? Do you just have a blanket order? No, you can't pass the test, you can't get in? Or
well, that depends on the program. I mean, some have room, space, time, and wherewithal to manage those that, I'd call it a softer, skill area or behavioral area. Some don't, and so that's not a, anything like a one size fits all, but it's really a decision about, is that one more thing you want to undertake? Or do you say, hey, you know what, that's great. Come back when you're 60 days clean, and we'll be happy to reconsider you or consider you. I mean, I'm not running a program. I ran a railroad, but it's that kind of thing where sometimes you just don't have the room or capacity until people change the behaviors. Other times you can help them change the behavior. So I don't have a good answer for how to do it other than when we look at the successful programs, they seem to have a pretty good handle on how they want to deal with that within their cohorts. And so, I always go to the back end. I always just say, look at your program. And if this person, stays on the straight and narrow and cleans up and does well, that's great. If they don't, what does that do for your program? When that employer comes back to you and says, hey, the last person you sent me really didn't pan out because they're, basically, selling fentanyl to other employees. I mean, what does that do with your program? I mean, you're done. You might as well get in a different line of work. So, I always put it on what is the social community expectation, and then you kind of cover that over with, other issues. But the real issue is who's responsible for worker safety, and I can tell you who's liable, but the person who's responsible is that worker. So you're talking about changing a behavior so that the worker takes responsibility for their fitness for duty, and they're always fit. So, again, I worked in a number of industries, and you can look at contributing factors, but we look at distraction, and we as one contributing, and then another is are you impaired for whatever reason, and so.
And usually the health departments, you could partner with the health department to do the tests. So
yeah, I'm not saying the program has to do the test. I'm saying the program needs to really be sure that the people in their cohorts understand the consequence of substance use. Any other questions? I didn't mean to preach, so I'm sorry. Okay, well, I'll turn it back over to.
So the answer is it depends, and you really have to feel out working backwards and see what your mission is, what you can tolerate, how much case management you can do, and decide early on what your acceptance parameters are in terms of bringing people into the program. Good.
Right. And, often it's the brother sister part of labor. It's your coworkers. So do they want to be on a crew with somebody who's not always there, whoever that is. And sometimes it's other things. Can they get up and get to work on time, or, can they socially interact? And so it's, a lot more than just straight impairment or something. And so again, the idea of a policy, it depends, and each program has to make that decision, and it's a hard decision, but at the same time, sometimes it's simple. Simple doesn't mean it's easy, but it is simple, which is.
Yeah, and David commented in the notes that he said it would also help to have this in some sort of policy form. So, and this is something you really have to think about. What is our policy? And
right. So each organization needs to come up with what that approach will be. And some have, and they said that it's a zero tolerance at any point in the program, just like attendance is, 100% attendance.
And some say it's up to the employer. The employer is going to test before he hires.
Right. So again, I don't have any problem, and a lot of employers do test, Walmart test, but the question is, you're having people go through this training. They're wearing your program on their sleeve in terms of reputation. And if they can't get employment at the end of that, what are they saying about your program? And what are those employers who aren't accepting them saying about your program? And so you don't want to frustrate people and say, yeah, it's okay, it's legal. You can get high every night after work and, on your lunch break if you want. And then, they find out that, no, that's not acceptable anywhere. What have you done for them? So, mine is a two-prong approach. One is you want to make sure the worker understands the consequence of their behaviors. And two, you want to train people so they can be employable. And so, that's really what kind of puts the rails up.
Great. Thanks, Nolan. This has been a contentious issue. We've kind of seen it go from one direction to another, from very strict to lenient to, and I think you've got the right approach. It depends, and go in that direction. Any questions about anything we talked about today? We usually try to keep these about an hour, so we kept you a little bit longer. Thank you, Nolan, for that comment. Does anyone have strong feelings of what they do in terms of drug testing? Is it anyone have you can't get in if you test positive, period? Paul, what do you all do?
We want everyone that can't fit that standard. I mean, that's our program, right? So our program is focused on the toughest to serve, and sometimes drug use is the least of their challenges or obstacles. And self-medicate, there's one thing, recreational use is one thing, but many times we find that self-medicate due to trauma and PTSD and those things. So we wouldn't have a program. Our program is focused on violence reduction and keeping people on this side of the grass. Once we can get a little more stability, then those that have the ability to move into the private marketplace do so. And those that have a lot more work challenges to overcome, they have a tendency to repeat the process. Sometimes it doesn't happen where they could have that stability or self-control until maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 different attempts at it. So it's a very, very
I'm sorry, may have lost you.
Yeah, and so I'll pick up on what Paul's saying. You might have a capacity within your program to deal with this, but then when they go out into private sector, public sector, that might be different, and so that development has to be different, or it has to stick differently.
Well, and Paul brings up some interesting issues. He said, his cohorts have a lot bigger problems than drugs, and his employer base may be totally understanding that we've got kids coming out that they have issues, but
right. So
smoking
drugs
marijuana
aren't
isn't
always
the
the
worst.
issue. Sometimes it's a symptom of it, and I'll get off marijuana and get into other kinds of substances that we see that impact behaviors, and but at the end of the day, is your worker able to work safely? And so whether that's from an attitude, anger management, comportment standpoint, behavior of showing up, consistency, or just safety and attentiveness, all of those things matter. And so like I said, when we do accident investigation or incident investigation, usually there's some form of distraction or inability to perform safely that contributed, to the event. And so, but nobody wants to see the employer get hurt. Nobody wants to see the coworker get hurt. Nobody wants to see an environmental, insult. Nobody, and so it's really all over the map. But again, some programs, bless them if they have the capacity to deal with people who are going through that, because as Paul said, it is not one time, it's over and over and over and over until they can get it right. And other programs don't have that capacity, and they're putting them out into private worker space or public space, and they have to be able to go from there. So it just depends. And but like I said, there's things you can look at and touch on to make sure, or to ensure that it's being covered somewhere, if not in your program, in the team of programs and people who help your trainees.
Well, thank you, Nolan. That's something we've been wrestling with, and everyone's got their own opinion and approach. A great report. Okay. We'll put this in the notes. Learning and workforce development. Okay. Thank you for the comment.
Yeah, and there's data on just occupations. Different occupations have different levels of drug use. I guess that's what you call it, and it's very high in construction industry and some others compared to, but it pervades every industry because it's part of our society. So it doesn't matter if you're an admin or corporate CEO. There's still this issue that pervades our society. So the real issue is, can they work safely, and do they understand the consequence of their behaviors, and can they take responsibility for that?
Well, thanks everyone for coming today. And our next PLC is going to be on the 15th. And we're going to talk to someone who's been there, done this many times. Fred is a great guy. And as I said, they've had 9 re-ups, so they obviously have something going out there in Richmond. So we'll talk to him about his program. Okay, thank you. Thank you for coming, everyone, unless you've got additional questions.
Good to see everyone.
Stick around for a few. Thank you.
Steve, you could probably turn us off.
Okay.
We will put notes